The next system of the body to discuss is the muscular system. We talk about this in relationship to bones. The major organ of the muscular system is, of course, muscles, even though they're technically not an organ. The function of the muscular system is movement. Muscles are used to move things. And we're going to talk about different types of muscles here in a second that are used to move different types of things. I put using bones, but I guess not all muscles move bones, as we'll see. There are three types of muscles, and maybe you already know this. The first type is cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscle does not use bones. Cardiac muscle is found in the heart only. The interesting thing about cardiac muscle is that it beats on its own. It needs no signal from the brain to beat on its own. Interesting story. In a lab, they were trying to use stem cells, which some of you know about from your reports, to grow heart muscle. And they found is that when they got a group of cardiac cells all together in a dish, they started to beat together on their own. And it was just cells, we don't really understand the mechanics of that, but cardiac muscle is found only in the heart. There's skeletal muscle, also known as voluntary muscle. Voluntary because your brain, even though it's in control of this, the voluntary part of your brain, cerebrum and cerebellum, are in charge of moving these. Skeletal because it's attached to bones. And then smooth muscle. Smooth muscles for the involuntary parts. Well, where are involuntary muscles? Around your digestive tract. So in your intestines and things like that, where you don't think about what's happening, but they're squeezing food along right now and moving it along through your body and helping it be used for digestion. There are involuntary smooth muscles around your eye, around the pupils of your eye and your irises, and so on. Here are a look at, this is just a slide that shows what they look like under a microscope. They're very different looking kinds of fibers. So muscles work by contracting, okay? A super important idea is that muscles work by contracting. A lot of people say, well, and we're going to look at this in class a little bit, about how your muscles work together to move you. You have muscles on the top of your arm that bend your arm. You have muscles on the bottom of your arm that straighten your arm. Okay, and we'll look at this in a number of ways. So muscles contract. When they contract, they pull on bones using tendons. Okay? Tendons. So you can find a tendon. If you feel on the inside of your elbow or on the back of your knee, you can feel these ropey things that are attached to your muscles. Those are tendons. And the tendons are attached to the bone. So when a muscle here contracts, contraction means it goes from long and skinny to shorter and thicker. When it contracts, it's going to pull on that tendon, which is going to pull on that bone. So when you look at a muscle at a microscopic level, it's made up of all these little stringy fibers. And what they do is they slide their filaments. By the way, those filaments are made of protein. They slide those filaments past each other. They slide past each other. So if you could see it at a really small microscopic level, it's made up of these little fibers like this, that when the muscle contracts, those fibers sort of, I guess I'll just draw it here a second. We have, if this is what it looks like at rest, you have fiber, 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 okay? That these little things attach and pull, and that makes these strands come together because this has pulled them. so on. So this muscle cell that was this far apart is now this far apart. We call that contraction. That happens all the way down the muscle cell. The whole muscle will contract. Let's take a look at this animation a minute. So we have an animation here of a muscle on the top of a joint contracting. Okay, and as the biceps here contracts, it pulls the bone up. Okay, as the biceps contracts, pulls the bone up. The second animation shows what happens inside of a muscle. These are the little fibers, and they get pulled together. If I refresh the page and make it play again, those little fibers get pulled together, and that shortens and makes the fibers. We're looking at these fibers right down at the bottom, on the bottom right below the animation here. Okay, it's talking about these fibers right here. The thing about muscle contraction is it requires a lot of energy. We'll talk more about energy and energy usage later on this year. So why do your muscles get tired? Well, they get tired because they run out of energy. We call that fermentation. In your muscles, that's called fermentation. When your body can't keep up with the amount of oxygen you need, what we call the oxygen demand, the food you take in, instead of being converted to energy, is being converted to something called lactic acid. You maybe heard this from your track coach this week, that you've got all this lactic acid in your muscles. It's not necessarily true that that's all of your problem, which we'll talk about in class, but you get tired. You don't produce as much energy, call it muscle tiredness, while you don't have run out of energy, literally, in your muscles. So your legs get all shaky. Even though your arms feel just fine, your legs might be all shaky and it feels like they can't hold you up. That's muscle fatigue. We'll look at muscle fatigue in a lab in class. So that's our discussion of muscles and the muscular system.